Let's talk movies, everyone. As normal, we got a big, fat honker of a historical movie to talk about. We had to take an intermission on this one. I keep wanting to say that these are the longest movies we've seen, but of course Alexander always looms in the background as the mega long movie of all time. But we're talking about a movie that's already had a lot talked about it. A lot of times we talk about movies that sometimes people overlook, don't necessarily appreciate all the time because the historical genre is, say, not the most frequently visited. But Titanic, let's just say it's Titanic. I mean, everyone knows about this movie. Now, here's an interesting thing, though. I came into this movie last night, we watched it last night, 100% fresh. Not only had I not seen the movie, I hadn't seen parts of the movie. So I really didn't know what to expect. I saw it all just completely green, and I'm going to give you my unfiltered opinion on this one. It might not be what you expect, so you're going to want to catch that. We are welcoming this morning my lovely mother, Michelle. Back in the day, how many times did you go see this in the theater?
You know, I wasn't one to watch movies over and over and over, but I did want to keep going to this one. It was the thing to do too. It's if people would ask, "How many times have you seen it?" I would think it was about 7.
Oh, only 7.
Only, I know.
Yeah,
I mean,
7.
I was probably not
okay, so
even close to some of the.
Did you cry in the movie all 7 times?
No, probably not all 7, but I loved it. I did. I really loved this movie. It was just iconic for when I was in my early 20s. So.
Right. This was a 90s movie, probably the quintessential 90s movie if you had to pick one.
Yeah.
Other than, I was going to say 2001: A Space Odyssey, but that's 2001. So.
Yeah.
Well, that came out in 1968.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it's about the future.
Okay, so I was right the first time. I was right the first time. 1968?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm totally off.
It was 2001. It's supposed to be
I'm totally off.
Yeah, they're future.
They were very off, though.
So, but this is another famous director that we're tackling. This is James Cameron, who we talked about him last night. Did Titanic, did both of the Pandora movies, or the Avatar movies, and is...
The
Terminator movies is a huge success, but he's got a really slow rate when it comes to making these movies. I think this was the only movie he made in a space of 12 years.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy, but
he's only made 3 since this one.
Quantity over quality. So, anyhow, John, take us into the specs.
Yep. So this movie is obviously, it's kind of like a historical, it's like a romance mixed with history. Obviously the Titanic was this big ship that was by, I think it was called the White Star Line. It was it was a British ship, and it was supposed to be the ship of dreams is what they called it, and it was it was supposed to be unsinkable, and it was just this luxury liner, and it made its maiden voyage in 1912 is the year the movie takes place.
Maiden and only voyage.
Yeah, maiden and only voyage. Because, of course, as everyone knows, the Titanic sinks after hitting an iceberg.
Yeah, they were like, "Do you know how it ends?" last night, and I was looking at them, I was like, "Guys, I know the ship sinks."
Yeah. So basically, this movie mixes a romantic story about these two people from different classes of society that meet each other and fall in love, and then it mixes that with a bunch of amazing special effects and visuals to kind of produce what became the highest grossing movie of all time. So yeah, the specs, as Nate said, it was directed by James Cameron. He also wrote the movie. It was produced by James Cameron and John Landau. I think he also helped Cameron produce the Avatar movies. And then it stars Leonardo DiCaprio as Jack. Shoot, I'm forgetting his last name. You don't remember his last name? Jack Dawson.
Dawson, yeah.
Jack Dawson. Kate Winslet as Rose. She has a really weird name. It's like Rose DeWitt Decatur or something. Yeah, Rose DeWitt Decatur. In the movie, she tells him her name. He's like, "You'll have to write that one down for me." Anyway, and then it stars Billy Zane as Cal, her Rose's.
Who actually does a good
very
job.
kind of stupid, very selfish fiance. It's like an arranged marriage type of deal. And then we have Kathy Bates plays a real historical figure. Molly. God, now I'm forgetting her name. Molly something. It was Molly. Hold on, I'm gonna find it. It was Molly.
She's an American tycoon.
Oh, Molly Brown, who they called the unsinkable Molly Brown. And after
Probably.
the
I'm not gonna make.
She's obviously one of the survivors. And then, so it's Francis Fisher. Bernard Hill plays the captain of the Titanic, and obviously most people know him from his performances
really
in Lord of the
enjoyed
Rings
watching
as King
him.
Theoden.
Yeah.
Which would have been 4 or 5 years after this movie. And then it stars Jonathan Hyde, Danny Nucci, David Warner plays the cop, the kind of bodyguard that Cal has hired, and then Bill Paxton plays in the modern day storyline. Bill Paxton plays. I'm forgetting his name, but he plays the guy that's extracting the stuff from the Titanic, the artifacts, and trying to find the heart of the ocean. Cinematography is by Russell Carpenter. It was edited by Conrad Buff, James Cameron, and Richard A. Harris. The music was by James Horner, of course, and then the production companies were Paramount Pictures, 20th Century Fox, and White Storm Entertainment. It was distributed by Paramount in the United States and Canada, and by 20th Century Fox internationally. It was released in 1997. The premiere was actually in Tokyo on November 1st, and then it was released in December 19th in the United States. It has a running time of 195 minutes. That's 3 hours and 15 minutes. It's an American movie, and with the primary language being English. Although there's a little bit of
German.
subtitles at the beginning.
There's a little German
In the card game. Maybe it was maybe one line that was in subtitles. And then the budget was $200 million, and it made $2.264 billion.
Woo!
So,
Back in 1990, what?
7.
That's a lot of money in
Yeah, back then,
1997.
They
Yeah.
said that it cost as much to make the movie that it did to build the ship.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And they do a good
But
job
that's-
reproducing the
And this
shit.
one
Yeah,
didn't
they
sink.
do. And they had to destroy that when they poured that water
Uh-huh.
at the end. That last scene, they only had one take. 'Cause,
Yeah.
You know, all that water was going to take that the stairwell part. But they did it. It was very historical.
I'm asking, but I'm also I know this because I saw they didn't build a ship that large.
No, it was a miniature.
You can tell that there's a lot of miniature work going on.
Oh, yeah.
There was CGI. It was done well, you know.
I know all the scenes in the water were filmed in a big pool.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, and
But it looks pretty
But,
convincing.
yeah, they did say that the water was cold. Like Leonardo complained a
Yeah.
lot, but by the end,
yeah, it's because he's like 95 pounds.
he got
soaking wet.
more used to it. They said by the end, but
Yeah.
and she they asked her maybe if she wanted to wear some kind of wetsuit, I think, at some of the scenes, and she just decided not to. But so when she goes in to save him that one time, and that's real. You know, like,
Fun
take my
fact,
breath
though,
away.
An interesting thing that we'll have to talk about is that the actors did not like working with the director.
Really,
And
James
they said they would
Cameron?
never work with him again.
Oh my
Apparently
gosh.
he's a very perfectionist type
Cameron.
of eccentric guy.
Well,
Like,
he makes
his-
good movies.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
yeah.
Anyway, so we move into positives.
Yeah, so
Sure.
we always let guests lead off. So
Oh, okay.
if you prefer, what's your biggest positive for this movie?
I loved the mixture because I liked the Titanic at the time. I was just so interested in the actual historical. And I know it's not real; those two characters aren't real, but it was still just a really neat idea to mix, like what y'all like to do with these movies. It's a very historical thing, but then add this whole love story in it. You know, but. I think I really love the music. I remember that Celine Dion recorded it, and I think I remember hearing that is it James Cameron?
James Horner.
Yeah, but
the music.
no, the director didn't
James
want to
Cameron.
use. He wanted to use all without words.
Oh yeah. You don't hear the words in the
instrumental,
movie.
yeah.
It's just the instrumental.
Yeah. But he finally, yeah. So the music was really good. I mean that was an iconic song too. Back then.
But there's some other good parts of the score too, like at the beginning when it's showing all the people. It's like this real life footage of everybody, like when it was actually leaving. It's kind of a similar tune, but it's kind of different. It's
it does, and it is super long, but it does kind of do a nice job of like setting up the storyline of the love story, and then there's this big like when we took intermission, just it changes, and then the sinking is done. So it's almost like two kind of separate movies in a way, but they do a good job.
Yep, I definitely see that. John,
you go next.
Okay, so I think something that surprised me when I watched this movie that I was not expecting at all was the frame story that they put this in. Which the frame story was these archaeologists or scientists searching the wreckage for the diamond, and Rose as an old woman finding out about this and then going back to where the ship sank and revisiting that part of her history. That was really cool. I was so caught off guard when the movie started with these high-tech submarines. It was I was like, what's happening? I was not expecting this.
Yeah.
But that was really cool.
Yeah.
Aspect of it. I think that was a really effective frame story. It was funny how she had to be like 101 years old. The lady to make that work. In the story, but it was cool. It was all. I think it was. I like enjoyed the frame story. I thought it did a good job of putting it all in perspective. Now, there is a criticism I have. Me and John talked about this a little bit of one aspect of the frame story that I didn't think worked well. I think it could have been tweaked and it would have been just fine.
Yeah.
But I'll talk about that during the
What do you think of the screenplay? Because you're talking about the writing of the movie. Like, what do you think of the screenplay in general? Because I know you're always interested in that stuff.
Yeah, and I was going to talk about this as one of my other positives, but I'll go ahead and jump in.
Yeah.
There was a pretty high literary IQ, or I should say thematic IQ, when it came to this movie. There's an old saying, I can't remember the guy's name, but the Russian, everybody knows about the Russian playwright who loses the gun on the stage, and it's like, hey, if you put a gun on the stage in Act 2, you got to shoot it in Act 3. They did this in the story. Nothing that they introduced in the story was left unshot in that sense. Like, for example, they had a scene where they made a big deal of putting a car on the ship, and I was like, that's kind of random, but then they came back around to it. I won't say how, but and they made that relevant to the story. They did it, that just shows a pretty high amount of thematic IQ, and that's something that you don't get in every single movie nowadays. They paid attention to the stuff that they included in the movie, and they made that relevant. The sign of a truly masterful artist from a literary perspective is that no word or action in the story is wasted. Now, I don't think it was perfect in that regard. Few movies are, but it was good, Now, the side where I'd more criticize, and I can talk about this more in the negatives, but not in a major way, just in a nitpicky way. Some of the dialogue was kind of strange at times.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit, how much they yell each other's name.
Rose.
I mean, part of that
You want to
is...
say that, or you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I'll say that. And honestly, the positives outweigh the negatives as far as the screenplay is concerned. It's a well thought out story. I definitely appreciate the fact that there's no contrived events that happen that make the plot. I feel like a lot of writers write themselves into a corner and then they have to make the plot happen somehow. This happens in Kingdom of Heaven, and you're like, dude, why'd you have to do that? But there was no contrived plot events, so thumbs up on the writing.
Yep. So my biggest positive is the technical aspects of the movie, like the So I'll just kind of go through them. So this movie, first of all, won I think 12 Academy Awards, and it won all of the technical awards, all of the editing awards, visual effects awards, all of the music award, obviously,
so.
And it won all these technical awards, and deservedly, like you said, deservedly so. I mean, they do such a good job of recreating the Titanic. It looks very real, even though it's obviously a miniature, and they do a really good job with the costume design. The costumes look very authentic. I don't know who they consulted or whatever when they were designing them, but they look very early 1900s, and I loved how they portrayed the early 1900s culture, how you have the very big class divide between you have the upper class people that eat the fancy dinners and go to the church service and stuff, and then you have the third class people who are just partying down there and just having kind of a good time. And I liked how it contrasted those two aspects, because I think that was important because this movie obviously on the Titanic that was how it was. And I feel obviously it all goes back to the story of the movie, where you have Rose is in the high class society, Jack's a poor guy from Wisconsin. No, Wisconsin. And there's a funny scene where he goes to dinner, he gets invited to dinner because he saves Rose's life. He stops her from jumping off the thing, and he gets invited to dinner in the upper class. And it's so funny. This one guy is are you of the Boston Dawsons? Are you part of the Boston Dawsons? And he's like, no, the Chippewa Falls Dawsons. That scene was really funny. But I loved how it contrasted the two societies. And it was really cool. They had they had a lot of real life historical figures in there. They had the guy who made the boat, which he was a real. I love that guy. His first name was Andrew. Mr. Andrews is what they called him. And then there's just some. I loved the actors who played the upper class people. They really did a good job of making them really kind of hateable, and especially the guy who played Cal. But we can talk about the acting in a minute. So the other technical aspects. Costume design, the production design, obviously, and then I really enjoyed the sound effects, and the sound of the movie was real crisp and stuff, and obviously the visual effects. But the sound effects of the movie, it never it always feels like very like it's not like over the top when the Titanic sinks. Like it's the music combined with the sound effects is like the perfect mix, and you just like when people are like jumping off, you can like hear the water crash when they fall in when they land, and then you can like there's some really interesting scenes where the guy jumps off and he like hits like a propeller and it makes that really loud like bang sound, and it just makes you like feel like you're in the moment and stuff. So like the sound combined with the visual effects and the music, those three things really, I think, really improved the movie and made it really well done.
Yeah.
But but basically all of the technical aspects of this movie are like top notch.
Yeah.
And that's why it won 12.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. John, last night you said, well, technically it's a masterpiece. And I thought like he meant like there was a technical way something could be a masterpiece, and I was like, what do you mean technically a masterpiece? And he's like, no, technically, as in like in the technical aspects of the movie. And I was like, oh, a technical masterpiece.
Yeah.
I thought he was being like, it's bad, but it's a technical masterpiece, so we can't. No. But no, that's not what he was saying. Anyway, do you have any more puzzles, or is that it?
Yeah, we should do 2 or 3.
Oh, if any more. Did you know that he didn't, the director didn't know that there was a guy on the ship that was Jay Dawson?
Really?
Yeah, he didn't know until after, but it was just a
coincidence.
Coincidence.
Yeah, just like with when we did the Into the Wolves episode. What was his name?
The character?
Yeah, John Dunbar. There was a real John Dunbar.
Yeah, but he wasn't he wasn't actually based on the guy. He was just it happened to be the same way.
Yeah, I'm not giving that wasn't a positive. I was just saying I liked all these like coincidental things that I would hear after, and like again, the scene you said nothing goes lost or whatever. That scene with the 2 elderly people in the bed that decided later that really supposedly happened.
Really?
Yeah, that was supposedly.
Wow.
So in history. So, but yeah, there's so many little details. I mean, obviously 3 hours and over 3 hour movie. There's going to be a lot of details, but
attention to detail is what makes masterpieces.
Yeah, and you could go back to the movies over and over and see things you didn't notice, and I remember us discussing that as young people, like with my friends and stuff. Like, oh, I didn't notice that this happened, or this, there's a lot of details.
There's even some theories, some out there theories. I don't know if you've heard about these, but some like to say, and I'll leave this as a prelude to a later discussion, that Jack is actually a time traveler.
Yeah, he's like a ghost.
Yeah, I don't know why they would say that, but people be saying.
Well, I think it all stems from the fact that they say at the end there was no record of Jack. Like he was never. They don't. Yeah.
Yeah, but didn't he?
Yeah, but he won the.
He didn't have a ticket.
Yeah, he won the card and poker.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense to me. But anywho, you got any
more positives?
I mean, I would just want to say I agree with what they both said. I was going to mention what you said about the transition between love and disaster movie. It was very smooth. It was good. It really managed to. I actually enjoy movies that manage to pull off a tone shift like that really well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember at the time. I mean, we didn't get to do what y'all do and just stream movies and like have instant access to things, and so it was a big deal to go to the movies. But going to the movies was a thing that we did a lot, and for me, especially with dating dad and stuff, with your dad. We went to like a Star Wars and all these kind of like more action movies, the Terminator, even that's the same.
That's James Cameron,
yeah. But this one, it was fun because it was this epic long movie and it did have enough action for the guys to like it, but then this love story, so it was this combo of perfect date night.
There you go. Because the guys get to see the dudes falling like pinwheel off of the ship, and stuff. I was thinking about that. I was like, it manages to throw some pretty grotesque things in there. I think the only thing it doesn't really show is people visibly drowning. Like it never shows somebody where somebody dies underwater. Most of the people actually die of cold, which is pretty unfortunate. But it
was freezing. That water like they said, it was like -2 or something.
All that to say, I agree with that, the transition, and I agree with what you said about the technical aspects. And so really, you guys covered a lot of the bases that I was going to say in the music too. So I would just agree with all that.
Yeah. Do you have another big one though?
I
had a couple more.
Go for it.
I'll just rattle them off. I really enjoy the acting in the movie. I think it's really good. I think it's kind of like an underrated part of the movie. Like everybody thinks of just like the visual effects and like the disaster element of the movie. But I think that the two, like Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, did a really good job. I think she was nominated for lead actor. She didn't win, but. And also the actress who played the older version of hers was also nominated, but she didn't win it either. Those are the only two awards that didn't win.
She was the oldest one ever nominated.
Yeah, I think so. I saw that somewhere.
But she wasn't as old as you in the movie.
What are they going to actually get a 101-year-old woman?
Yeah. And then, so I really enjoyed the acting. Like I said, I especially enjoyed the acting by some of the people, like the upper class kind of like people that you're supposed to just kind of not like kind of just get annoyed with and stuff. And I really enjoyed the guy who played Cal. He was like really a good villain.
Eyeliner, bro.
Yeah, he was a really good villain in the movie. Like you like really just hate him, and like he does a good job of like selling his role as this like just upper class kind of like just like kind of just hateable guy. And so I really loved his performance, and obviously the performances of the two leads were solid. And I really also enjoyed the pacing of the movie. Like it's over 3 hours, but it moves at a pretty good pace. Like it doesn't ever like slow to a halt. Like there's always an interesting scene happening where there's like interesting dialogue, or like there's obviously the famous scenes, the iconic scenes, and then you obviously have the second half of them. Then you have the second half of the movie where it's just the sinking of the Titanic, and that's just pretty exciting.
It's funny, like with that line, I always thought that I thought while going into this that I would finally like get the context for that scene. I would get the reference more, but like seeing it added no additional information for me. Like it was like, okay, that just happened. He just stood up on the front of the ship and said, "I'm looking at like that."
Yeah.
I understand that reference 0% more than I did before.
Yeah. So anyway, I really enjoyed the pacing of the movie. I think there's never really a dull moment. There's not like a part in the movie where it just slows to a halt. And I think that I will say I do have a little nitpick about the pacing actually, and I'll talk about it in the negatives. But yeah, so those are some other big positives for me. The acting across the board, there's not really a bad performance, and then I really enjoyed the pacing of the movie. And also I will say I really enjoyed I enjoyed the music, like you said. The music, I think James Horner is really good at doing like the historical epic movies. Like he's really good at like capturing like the vibe that the director wants. Like he obviously did Braveheart, he did he did Troy, he did this one. But obviously this is his most famous score probably.
There's a lot of smaller characters that are really fun to watch.
Yeah,
the engineer of the boat.
The engineer,
and Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Andrews. Cool. Even down to the guys who play the music while the ship is sinking.
Oh yes, those guys were real.
Yeah, and that is so cool, and I love how they included real stories about it like that. And even those guys did a good job. I'd say that the acting, in my opinion, was generally good across the board. It certainly wasn't the best part of the movie.
Yeah, no.
It was generally good.
Yeah,
there were times where I cringed a little bit. I was like, but
yeah, and I had one more positive that I wanted to mention. It was the performance of oh shoot. I forgot. It just went from my mind. If I think of it, I will.
You haven't had your coffee.
I'm not having. Hold on, I'm gonna think. If I think of it, I'll bring it. But yeah, we can move into next.
Yeah, let's go.
If I think of that positive.
Let's go ahead.
Oh, I just remembered.
Okay, there it is.
No, I literally just disappeared from my head for a second. All right, I really think the movie does a good job of like capturing like the audience's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that like it doesn't like when the Titanic sinks, like there's just a lot of really emotional scenes that are really like. Powerful, especially when those guys start playing the famous hymn "Nearer, My God to Thee," I think it's called, and it's showing all these people that like are down in the holes that are just like they kind of just get they're like they're just accepting their fate. They're just gonna what this one woman's like tucking her children in, and then like there's just a lot of emotional scenes like that during the sinking of the Titanic, and I really felt like that. There needed to be those scenes because it couldn't just be like, oh, the Titanic sinks, but you don't ever get to see any like of the emotional moments that would have been happening. Sure, it did a good job of having those moments. I'm
pretty sure that the runtime of the Titanic sinking was like probably roughly the same time.
Yeah, they said 2 hours, right?
The Titanic to sink because
I think they did it
really?
like almost exactly.
Wow.
Like, it's like
in the Dark Knight they did it too.
Yeah. Like,
What do you mean the Dark Knight?
Oh, in the Dark Knight,
The
remember he
duration.
puts the mines on the side of the building in Hong Kong, and it says 2 minutes on the front of it, and it's actually 2 minutes elapsed
it's like
before the bomb
it's like real
same
time.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's the same duration, and you really get to see all the different stages of everybody losing their minds. Kind of sort of calm at first, and he's like, "Oh, what's going on? This must be just I want tea when I get back and stuff like this."
That is a really cool aspect. Actually, it is the sinking of the Titanic, because they said it took about like an hour and a half or something to sink, and that's about the runtime of the second half of the movie.
Yep.
But anyway, I really enjoyed the emotional moments in the movie.
Yep. So we can go ahead and dip into our criticisms of the film. Remember, would you like to lead us off? Do you have any criticisms? Any criticisms?
No, I mean, I can't think of any, like,
It can be a nitpick. It can just be like something that you just like a small thing that you didn't
We
like.
can come back.
Yeah,
It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, maybe come back, because I don't, one's not popping in my head.
So I'm gonna start us off with one.
Oh, I know what it's gonna be.
You know what it's gonna be.
The big.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about that later.
Okay.
Actually, I'm gonna lead off with something else. And y'all are gonna be irritated with me because I was complaining about this a lot last night. But like Leonardo DiCaprio looks so young in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Like I said this a lot, so I'm sorry for irritating y'all, but he looks like he's 15
So
years
you think
old.
they should have done Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise? They looked at both of them.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
Also, Matthew McConaughey.
Oh yeah.
wow. I mean, the thing, it's not even a rip on his performance. His performance is generally very good, and that's a great thing. But his face is super young. He looks like he couldn't grow
I think I remember thinking that too.
And it's the difference because she looks like she's a
older.
lot older than him, and he looks like he's halfway through puberty. Like his shoulders are really narrow. He's just as tall as her. He's got like this really shallow
They got
chest.
chemistry though,
I mean, they got
The
chemistry.
chemistry was good.
Yeah, in real life they became really good friends.
The guy is tiny, and it makes it uncomfortable when they get into the steamy scenes. Like what, and he looks so young, and it just kept.
He's actually older than her though.
That is so weird.
like the real life.
That is so weird.
In the movie, he's supposed to be a few years older.
It kept drawing me out of the movie. That was the hard part, because the movie's generally very immersive, and I enjoy that part of it. It continually pulled me out of the immersion, and that's why I have to cite it as a criticism of this movie.
I'm just glad that they didn't get Madonna as Rose.
Oh my
That was one of the.
That would have been so bad.
that
would have been so bad.
I mean, that's what I heard, but supposedly was talked about.
No.
But she, but the actress really fought for that role. They said that she really.
You can tell she was passionate about it, and she did a good job. I mean, I honestly think that her performance is probably a little better than DiCaprio's.
Yeah. My main criticism, one of my not a big criticism, it's still probably a nitpick, but like I think that at the beginning, I mentioned that I like the pacing of the movie, but there's two parts of the pacing that actually might be a bit problematic to me. At the beginning and the end, I feel like at the beginning it takes like a long time to get to the real Titanic. And like I love the framing device, but I feel like it was like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. There were too many scenes of like the helicopter coming in and the chance to get off. Then it's like showing her in her little dormitory, her picture, and it just goes on. And then there's the scene where she sees the picture for the first time, and I feel like it just could have moved a little bit faster. It needed to be like 5 or 10 minutes, maybe not 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes shorter.
When did you figure out that the older lady was her?
I knew as soon as she was on screen. I mean, I was like, that's.
She says it pretty quickly. She's like,
I mean, because she's watching like the TV's on and she like looks up and it's like, oh, clearly that's.
And then at the end as well, I feel like
I think some
the end.
back in the day.
At the
Figure
end,
that out.
at the end, I also feel like the movie goes on a little bit long, like especially with the scene with
He's
Rose
like
and
the
Jack.
Return of the King.
Yeah, the scene with that is actually a valid criticism of that
The what?
movie.
The Return of the King.
It does go on to
The Return of the King goes on like for so long. At
It
the
does.
end. It's just like there's like a scene after scene after scene at the end.
I hate to criticize that movie. If there was a criticism, that would be it.
That would be it.
Anyway, with this movie too, I think that the scene with Rose and Jack in the water, the famous scene, it goes on a little bit too long with them talking to each other. It just it just goes on like a few minutes too long. And then also I think at the end, when it goes back to the present day, it just takes a minute to like wrap up. I feel like it could have wrapped up in a more timely way.
Well, the whole her throwing that diamond.
I mean, I've never really had a problem with that, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, here's the thing. The funny thing is I went into this movie expecting to be like, oh, that doesn't make any sense and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that there was times in the movie that I did feel like that, but it wasn't the times that everyone talks about. And the two times that people usually talk about, I went downstairs before we filmed this episode, and Dad was like, "Did you see the door?" Is the door, which she is on, and then the diamond that she throws in the water. And let me just go and say, yes, both of them are kind of ridiculous. The door does look too big to just have her.
It was really an artifact that they used.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
not
cool.
that actual one, but it was a replica of something that was found.
That is so.
But,
that is so.
But
cool.
even Kate Winslet said that he could have fit on there with me.
Yeah, and yes,
It was-
and yes, that was weird, and yes, there doesn't seem to be any apparent reason for her to throw, no thematic reason for her to throw the diamond back in the water.
Right.
There should have been at least a throwaway line about like returning the ocean's heart to itself or something like that to justify it, because there was no reason. It was worth.
Well, it makes
so
people.
I feel like it was
It
that
leaves
he had,
people that discussion though. You know.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
they did it, then people wouldn't have that.
It's true.